Before we understand the Taylor series, there are certain things that we need to understand, that is modulus of a number, power of a given number, and a factorial of a number. So modulus of a number, let's consider 5. We are trying to find the modulus of 5. 1 modulus of 5 is 1. 2 modulus of 5 is 2. 3 modulus of 5 is 3. 4 modulus of 5 is 4. And 5 modulus of 5 is 0. So whenever there is a multiple of 5, when we are finding out the modulus of 5, whenever it is 15, 5, 10, 15, then it is 0. So that means these are the reminders. So 1 modulus of 5, 2 modulus of 5, 3 modulus of 5 is 3, 4 modulus of 5 is 4, 24 modulus of 5 is 4, or 23 modulus of 5 is 3, 22 modulus of 5 is 2, and 25 modulus of 5 is 0. So that is the modulus of a given number. So, and the mathematical equation, that is x square x cube, is being given. So if I is equal to 1, then x, then power of x comma I. If I is equal to 2, then x square, that is equal to power of x comma 2, that can be written as power of x comma I, where I is equal to 2, and I is equal to 3 x cube, and we can write it as x comma 3, that is equal to power of x comma I. Now next one, we are trying to understand what is the factorial of a given number. Factorial of a given number is, let's consider 5. 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1 is a factorial of a number, that is equal to 120. Factorial of 4 is 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Factorial of 3 is 3 into 2 into 1. Now, factorial of a number, in our program, we are trying to solve this factorial of a given number using recursive method. Recursive stands for calling it again and again. So that means recursive function of factorial is that we are trying to call this function again and again. That fact of int n function is called again and again. So under this recursive function, there are two possible conditions we are going to place. That is, one, if n is equal to 0, return 1. That means the last condition, the stopping condition. So how to stop this recursion? So that is the stopping condition. Else, to call the function again and again. So you have a return, else return n, fact of n minus 1. So that is all. So L fact of n minus 1. So this part is I have written for the understanding, to understand. So int fact of int n. So when we call this function, so this function is called again here, int fact of n. So this is the stopping condition, and this function is called again. So return star of fact of n minus 1. So it goes on, this function. So the program is only this much. This is the program, and we are calling the same function again inside the given program. Now let's consider 5 as an example. So we are trying to find out the factorial of 5, and then int fact of n, that is equal to 5. What is the fact of 5? So now n is equal to 0, we return 1. If n is equal to 0, return 1. Else return 5 into, that is equal to n into, instead of writing 5, you can write as n star of fact of n minus 1. So that is equal to 5 into 5 minus 1. So n is equal to 4 here. So now again this function is called int fact of int n is equal to 4. This function is called. Now again, if n is equal to 0, return 1. If it is equal to 0, this is the stopping condition. So we have not yet occurred to this condition. We'll go to the next condition, that is else. Else return n equals 4 into fact of n minus 1, that is equal to 4 into 4 minus 1. So int fact of n minus 1 is 4 minus 1 is equal to 3. So int fact of n is equal to 3. This function is called again. Now again, this is the stopping condition, which we have not reached, that n is equal to 0, because n is equal to 3, and then that is equal to 3 into fact of n minus 1. So again this function is called int, and where n is equal to 2, again it will call to the interior function. So this function is not reached, and then int 2 star of fact of n minus 1, that is equal to 2 minus 1. Again this function is called where n is equal to 1. So this is where it is going to reach the if condition. So if n is equal to, if it is n fact of n and n is equal to 1, then it will reach next condition, that is equal to 1 fact of n. This function is called, it will reach here. This, it will call this function again and it will reach to this stopping condition here. So because n is equal to 0 here, when it calls it, n is equal to 0, this condition is true. N double equals 0, so this condition is true, and it will reach, if n is equal to 0, then it will return 1. Now this condition is true, it will return 1. So after returning 1, so you have the return value of fact of n minus 1, that is equal to 1 minus 1, it is 0. So when n is equal to 1, so the return value is 1. So it becomes 1 into 1. So the return part of it, this part is 1, only this part is 1. So return value of this function, return value of this function is 1. So that is this part. So 1 into return function of this, that is 1. So 1 into 1. Now return function of this function is 1. 1 into 1 is 1. Again it becomes 1. So here the calculation is n is equal to 2 star of 1, that is 2 into 1. So the return function of this n is equal to 2 is 1, and then multiplied with 2. So you have 2 is the answer, and this 2 is returned here. So return function of this, return value of this function is 2. So we multiply 2 with 3. So 2 into 3 equals 6. And we return 6 here. So 6 is returned. Again the return function of this is 6. That is becomes 4 into 6, that is equal to 24. So now 24 is the return value, and it becomes 5 into 24 equals 120. So the final result of this function is 120, which is returned here. So the return value of this function is 120. So this function will return 120, and that returning is given by int. So int specifies the return value. Return type of 120 is returned here. Okay, so let us look at the picture of how we are. So here in this, it is 5 factorial of function is called again. So again the next function is called 4 into function called, 3 into function called, 2 into function called, 1 into function called, and then when 1 into function called, it returns 0. So 0 is 1 is it reaches 0 and 1 is returned, and then 2 is returned, and then 6 is returned, and then 4 into 6, that is equal to 24 is returned, and finally we get 120. Okay, before understanding, 3 important things that we need to understand is modulus of a given number, and the square or value of a number, and a factorial of a number.